you're in the market for a American muscle car, your options are pretty limited. You have, of course, the sales leader, the Ford Mustang, which just introduced a brand new model coming soon. The Chevy Camaro, which GM said is gonna die after next year. And you have the platform mate to this car, the Dodge Challenger. And let's say you want 4 doors. You need a family car, but you still want that cool muscle dad car vibe. Well, your options are even more limited. You get this. This is the only car on the market that would be considered a true muscle car with 4 doors. It is the Dodge Charger. Now, Dodge has worked out a nice little niche in the car world ever since Pontiac decided to not be around anymore, thanks to GM. That was their sports car division. And Ford had decided to kill all their cars, minus the Mustang. Dodge decided to jump in and become the sports brand of America, and they've done pretty well with it. They have more of the higher end Hellcats, Demons, Red Eyes that you know about. But what about the base model? This is an SXT. It's a 2022. Now, this model's been around since 2011. It is starting to show its age, but I think it's still pretty cool. Let's have a look around. If you've watched some of my previous videos, you know I like to give my cars names, and the name for this one was inspired by the color because it is a very red. In fact, Dodge calls it the Toured. So that inspired the name Tory for this Charger. Let's start out back. You have the wraparound tail lamps with LEDs in them. This is from Dodge's facelift in 2015. They jumped on the bandwagon of everyone else, putting the big chunky spaced out letters. You do get rear sensors even on the base model, plus a dual exhaust. Now coming out to the side, these standard rims, a little bit small for this car. We got a lot of gap in between there. That's because these are 17-inch rims. I would highly suggest you upgrade these to 20s because for just $1,000 more, you can get 20-inch rims that are blacked out. You can get the blackout package. It'll give you black inserts in the grills and all around the car to make it look like your little base model Charger is maybe a Hellcat or a Demon or something a whole lot faster and 3 times the price. Now, going out front, the grille on this one is unintentionally blacked out because this is a rental and someone ripped off the Dodge badge. So I'm not mad about it though. It makes it look a little bit cooler. And you have LED wraparounds on the headlamps, but one problem I'm going to show you right now is this. They have LED surrounds, but they're still sticking old school with the halogen in the center. Yes, even though this car starts at $32,000 and almost every single car, unless you're talking low $20,000 car, has the new HID headlamps, this is still rocking halogen headlamps. If you want HIDs, you got to spend a whopping $1,500 on a driver accessory package. I know, it's a muscle car. What's under the engine? Let's find out. So it actually has a spring-assisted hood, which is nice. You don't have to prop it up. And underneath is an engine you'll find in over 10 million Chrysler vehicles. The Pentastar 3.6 liter variable valve timing 24 valve V6 engine. Yes, there's no V8, I get it, but this thing has almost 300 horsepower, 293 to be exact, and 260 pound-feet of torque. That is enough to get this heavy car 0 to 60 in 6.5 seconds. Pretty respectable for a base model and fairly efficient too. It has an 8-speed torque drive automatic transmission. And the thing that's a little different about this one is it has 2 overdrive gears. So if you're on the freeway, this thing will get 30 miles to the gallon. Now, I've been driving it in the city and I've been driving it the way Dodge has intended. So I've only been getting about 18 to 19 miles per gallon, which is actually their city rating as well. This is rated at 19 in the city, 30 on the freeway. But if you're buying this car, I don't think you're too concerned about gas mileage. So as great as the outside looks, the inside, not so much. A lot of questionable materials here. This is the same material that you'll find on the dashboard as well. And it's already severely discolored. This car is not even a year old and it's just all over the place. And then you got this weird cloth in the middle, a fake leather, fake metal that is definitely plastic, more plastic along here, and just no real design to it. Just multiple materials that are all just black and weird fake metal plastic. Now, I've driven my fair share of base models, and I've noticed a trend recently that to stuff all this new safety features like driver assist things, the car companies have started to cut back and not give you power or anything. Well, Dodge went the opposite direction. They just don't give you all the safety features, but they give you convenience and comfort, like a power seat and power lumbar. Now, you usually wouldn't see that on the base model, but I guess in lieu of the actual tech features, you get some of the more comfortable features, a very American style, I would say. Sitting down, you have a standard Chrysler wheel, which is very big, lots of buttons, as to be expected. One weird thing I noticed is I couldn't find the buttons to skip the track and do the volume, which are the only two buttons I really use. And I feel like I've seen this before in other Chrysler vehicles. They actually put them on the back side. Check this out. Over here, you got your skip track up and down, and you can flip between your favorite radio stations right there. And then over to the other side, you got it here as well. You can change your volume up and down, which is kind of cool because I guess you don't need to see it, but I had a hard time remembering, like, wait, is the left side volume or is the right side volume? And I found myself accidentally skipping songs. One more thing to note on the steering wheel, some more wear and tear issues I saw. This car's a year old. It's got like 26,000 miles. And you can definitely tell where people have been grabbing on. There's definite wear on the wheel already. And then going around, you have more of your not metal all the way around here. You do have standard gauges, you have a standard tach, standard speedometer, and in the middle you have a digital cluster with all your good stuff. Nothing too amazing here, just about everything that you would actually need. And then going around, you have a 7-inch infotainment display, which we'll get into in a minute. You can upgrade that to an 8.4, which would go all the way, but still pretty small screen for today's standards. And all the way across here, in case you forgot what you're driving, it is a Charger. But yeah, weird rubbery stuff, which could look good if it wasn't all discolored. I don't know if that's because the rental car company puts a lot of chemicals on it that it's already gotten discolored so fast, but I can only imagine what this is going to look like a few years from now. But the seats, I will say, are very comfortable, even though they are cloth seats. They got nice lumbar support, and they're pretty firm, yet, I don't know, I haven't had any issues with them so far. They're nice and wide, too. This is a very wide car. Dodge knows its customers. They're big, burly Americans. So here's the infotainment center. This is the standard 7-inch. Like I said, you can upgrade it to 8.4, which I think would fill out this little trim area. Not the biggest screen in the world, but, you know, this car did come out in 2011. And even with the upgrade in 2015, not much has changed since. This is the Uconnect system. It does have Apple CarPlay, but you do need to plug it in. But it works pretty well. The buttons are all really small, so unless you have giant fingers, I don't think you'll have any issues. Everything works pretty well. You got your climate control, which you can actually control from up here as well as below. Just standard things, compasses, settings, you know, pretty much anything you would find in a car these days. And going down below, you have, you know, standard buttons, mute, you know, your 4-way lights, screen off, which is kind of interesting. It'll just turn the entire screen off if you don't want to look at it and be distracted. You can turn your parking sensors off from right there. And of course you have your standard volume and tune buttons, which are still regular rotary dials, thankfully. You can turn your traction control off right there. And your climate control system, very old school. There's no dual zone temperature monitoring in here, which I think is fine, as long as it works. I don't really care. You know, when I want it to be cold, I turn it colder. When I want it to be warm, I want it to be warmer. I don't need a specific 72 degrees or 74 degrees, or you weirdos that like it in the 60s. I don't really care. If I'm comfortable, I'll turn it up or I'll turn it down depending on where I want it. Under here, you got some storage. You have a standard 12-volt cigarette lighter. And a rarity these days, an actual shifter. Not a weird video game joystick. It's an actual big hearse-style shifter, which is very fitting for this car. Right here is a weird thing, though. Gimmicky stuff that no one cares about. Your little rubber insert. It says DB for Dodge Brothers, if you weren't aware. the guys who started the Dodge company were two brothers and designed in Detroit. Pretty cheesy, but some people fall for those gimmicks. Maybe you could just pull it out, but I guess it looks better than that. Going here, you have cup holders with a weird unnecessary cover. I don't know why you need that, but sure, thanks Dodge. And then in between here, I thought would be a phone holder, but if you have a case on your phone, it won't fit. I'm actually shooting with my phone right now, but I guess I could show you what happens when I try to put it in there. It just kind of halfway goes in and falls out. So not very useful for that. But in the center, because this car is so wide, you have a lot of space here. Look at this. This thing's huge. One interesting thing I saw, you don't see this anymore either. The specific change holders for pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters. You don't see that anymore. It's kind of like a 80s, 90s car throwback. You got another 12-volt accessory in there, and you have two regular USBs. There's no USB-Cs on here, but you do have an aux cable in case you're still rocking that iPod from 2005. Fairly large back seat once you get over this little bit lower overhang, but inside the roof line comes up quite nicely. Now this seat I have set to where I would drive it at. I'm 6'3", so it is pretty far back. Still quite a bit of leg room here. I got a couple inches to spare. And once inside, you'll notice the door materials are exactly the same as the front doors. So at least they didn't go even cheaper in the back like a lot of cars these days do. Cup holders for each passenger in the door. You got a couple of pockets in the back for storage. Two vents that you can either just move left and right, but you can't turn them off or on. And two USB ports. As you can see, the plastic already pretty scratched up. It is a rental, so people are tougher on it, but that plastic scratches pretty easily. And I think you could get 5 people in this car pretty comfortably because this center section is very wide. But if you didn't want to use that, there is an armrest in the center with additional cup holders. Ooh, and obviously the rental car company neglects to clean that part when the cars are returned. Now, most people claim they need an SUV these days just for the extra cargo space. And if you need more cargo space than this car has, then okay, I'll give it to you that you need an SUV, but I bet you don't. Because I fit in here just fine. So maybe it's a 6-passenger car. But in all reality, it's a nice big trunk. And I don't think you'll have any problems going on a road trip with all this space. Another nice feature of the trunk is so many cars still use these hinges that crush all your groceries or whatever cargo you have. But this one's got a nice cover on it so you can avoid all that. You can put your precious cargo right up next to it, shut it, and not have to worry about it. If you live in a cold weather state, I should note that every Dodge Charger comes standard with remote start, and it's super easy. All you gotta do is hit this twice. The car starts up. When you're ready to get in, climb in the car, put your foot on the brake, hit the start button, ready to roll. Now, I always seem to find a couple weird things about cars. Let's go over some of the odd things that I found about this car. First is the doors. Look how wide these things open. Almost a full 90 degrees the door will open, which is great if you're bigger, like the average customer probably is for this car. But here's the problem. You get in, and I have long arms. There's no way I can reach the door handle to close that. So I would have to get out, grab the door, get back in, and then close it. And I've done this a few times when I hit the right turn signal. If you push it too hard, you get the windshield washer. So check this out. Whoops. A little bit annoying, but you'll always have a clean windshield. And while we're on the subject of turn signals, they're really loud in this car. Check it out. The side view mirrors on this car are particularly small. They're wide enough, but they're not quite tall enough, especially considering the fact that this does not have a blind spot monitoring system on it. A little bit bigger mirrors would be nice. Now, anybody driving this car would naturally want to peel the tires every once in a while, and that means you got to shut traction control off which should be as easy as just pressing this button. But what it does is this. You press the button, it'll put it in traction control sport mode. And even though the gauge says traction control is off, it is not 100% off. To do that, you gotta do a little bit of trickery. Shut the car off. And then when you start it again, you hold the traction control off and the engine start button at the same time. Hold it there until you see this message in the middle. That goes from sport to completely off. Now it is 100% off, so you can burn that rubber, baby. And then something unexpected started happening. I mean, I got a lot of attention in this car. Now, I get it, it's a cool, hot red color. But beyond that, what is so special about this car? It's a base model, it's got the base engine, it's the slowest one they make, yet people came up to me in droves. I have had more attention on this car than anything I've driven in recent memory. It's been wild, especially from my fellow Dodge bros. And over the course of a week, I had multiple Chargers and Challengers parking right next to me when there were plenty of other spots for them to park. So this was definitely done on purpose. Here's a couple examples. These Mopar cats know what's up. They park next to each other. I got a Hellcat Challenger parking next to me. I walk out to my car and look again what we have here right next to me. A Dodge Challenger. Now this car could have parked anywhere on the street, but they parked next to me. It's what Dodge calls the brotherhood of muscle, and it's very fitting because it was started by two brothers, and this is a muscle car, but it's a real thing. I didn't know that it was this deep. You know, you see Jeep guys, you know, Corvette guys, Ferrari, what have you, but the Dodge brotherhood is very strong, so much so that I even got into it a little bit. Real recognize real, Charger gang! I mean, it's exciting seeing people that are excited to see your car. It validates that you're driving something a little bit more special than the average person. Let's take the Charger for a spin. I got a nice road in Malibu in the mountains. Let's go. Now, muscle cars always used to get made fun of because they would go really fast in a straight line, but they couldn't take the corners. Well, I think they've sorted that out now. With the rear-wheel drive, the low stance of this car, it does pretty well on the corners, and it's a heavy, heavy car, but it doesn't feel quite so heavy. It really rolls through these corners nicely. So if you're gonna go after one of these Chargers, the nice thing is, as I mentioned earlier, it's been around for like 12 years, and even the redesign that looks almost exactly the same as this has been around since 2015. So I think the play here is to get the even bigger engine, because this V6 is nice, but you know what? Everyone's just gonna make fun of you that you didn't get the good one. So bump it up to the V8, and your car is just gonna be that much better. And I think you could find a good deal on these because they don't hold their value that well. I think for 20 grand, you could really get a nicely sorted Charger, maybe like an RT, even a Scat Pack. Look into that market. But if you gotta go new and you're only going with the base, get the blackout trim that I mentioned earlier. 1,100 bucks, you get 20-inch rims. Everything's blacked out. It just looks so much better than this rental spec with no options on it. And as far as the technology goes, I don't miss any of that. There's no blind spot monitoring. There's no driver assist. There's no lane departure. There's no radar cruise. I don't miss it at all because this car is that much fun to drive. Now, one thing I did miss is at night, those halogen headlamps are just not acceptable for 2022. And the problem is, if you want those HID headlamps that look so much better and you can see way more at night, it's $1,500, which is a lot for just some headlights, but I think you gotta go for it. So all in, base model, SXT, plan on spending about $35,000 on one of these, but it's gonna put a huge smile on your face. And it's still a really good price because you're gonna need that to pay for gas 18 miles to the gallon. I've put over 200 miles on it. I haven't got it over 20 miles to the gallon, but maybe because it's so fun to drive, I've been pretty aggressive with it. Overall, I had a lot of expectations in my head about what this car would be, a lot of stereotypes on the Dodge Mopar crowd, and a lot of them were true, but in a good way. This car is super fun. If you got kids you need to haul around and you still want to be the cool dad, have a look at the Dodge Charger. Put it on your list. It's your only option in this category, and I'm glad it's still around because it's only got about one more year, because the next Charger is going to actually need a charger. Dodge is going all electric, so pick up the last of the gas versions while you can. That's it for this review. I hope you enjoyed it. If you could leave a comment, leave a rating, and subscribe to the channel. It's at Car Snubs on YouTube or anywhere on social media. I'll see you on the next review.